Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second panel of the day at the Capital One stage. We are going to be focusing on the education side of the student-athlete experience. And also paying homage to College Football Playoffs Foundation called Extra Yard for Teachers. If you're not familiar with Extra Yard, it's a wonderful organization. If you have a teacher in your life or an educator in your life, you probably know that every teacher spends several $100s a year out of their own pocket for resources for their classrooms. I see some buzz. You're wearing TCU sweatshirts and t-shirts. You know, because teachers just want to do the best they can by their students, and sometimes that entails taking a little money out of their own pockets. So we've got a wonderful panel for you. Well, the first panelist is a guy who's perfect for this session because not only was he a football player at Rutgers, but in his post-playing life, he's become an award-winning, nationally recognized high school teacher. Please say hello to Nick Ferroni. Chris Johnson, you know who he is if you're an NFL player. He was one of the best running backs in the league back in his day and a first-round draft pick out of East Carolina University. Say hello to Chris Johnson. Nick Carparelli was a student athlete as well, but he was a hoops player, and relevant now is he is the executive director of bowl season. Nick, thanks so much for coming straight from the airport to come hang out with us. And last but certainly not least is a guy who is near and dear to the hearts of all Tide faithful. Greg McElroy brought a national championship to Tuscaloosa in 2010. And for this panel, he was, oh, by the way, the National Academic All-American of the Year. Thanks for joining us. And this panel will be moderated by Rachel Lindsay, who's a wonderful ambassador for the Extra Yard for Teachers Foundation and a TV personality and a bachelorette stud, which we need to have that conversation on a different day. Take it away. Questions for those of you who are watching on the stream, please send them to hashtag CFP All Access at the College Football Playoff channel. And also at the end of this panel, we're giving away tickets for CFP House, which is the VIP experience for the Playoff Playlist Live concert series this weekend. So be sure to stick around. Rachel, take it away.
Thank you.
You taking this?
Both.
Oh, you need the sheet, don't you?
Thank you.
You need the microphone too, or you're good?
I don't know. Can y'all
Okay.
hear me? Yeah.
Have
You can hear
fun.
me. You can hear me.
Bye.
This is great. Thank you so much. Hello. How's everybody doing? Warm? We're good? We're good. Okay. I'm so excited to host this panel because as an ambassador, I've been working for probably since 2018. And a lot of people are like, how did a former bachelorette get involved with the College Football Playoff Foundation? Well, I was a substitute teacher for a year. My mom was a teacher for 20 years. It's embedded in my family. My aunts and uncles were coaches, teachers. So this is one of my favorite things to do every year, where I get to sit here and talk to you all about what the foundation does. And it's all about inspiring, encouraging, and uplifting teachers. And we have such a wonderful panel here today to discuss education and student athletes. So let's get into it. Let's just like break the ice a bit for a second. Let's talk about teachers. That's what we're here for. So if you can, tell me, Greg, you're closest to me, so I'm going to pick on you first. Tell me, do you remember your favorite teacher? If you can limit it to just one, who's your favorite teacher and why? And you're smiling, so maybe there's a funny story that goes with that.
Yeah, there's a few. I feel like my favorite teacher was Joanne Rye. It's ironic enough. She was a kindergarten teacher at Palmetto Elementary. And what's funny is kindergarten was a little bit lost on me. I don't recall like the day in, day out intricacies of sitting on the line and counting to 5 and the other things that we learned, but she stayed in touch with me all the way through and kind of guided us all the way through, because she set and planted the seed in kindergarten of being accountable, being respectful, and all those other things. So the things that I learned in her class, albeit we learned about phonics and all the things that you would learn in a kindergarten teaching classroom, but the way that she impacted us and showing how much she cared about us was so remarkably impactful. So Joanne Rye would be my favorite teacher for sure.
I can't believe you named your kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
Can you name your kindergarten teachers? Can you? I knew you were going to say that. Current teacher down here. I can actually name mine if I think about it. But that's incredible that she stayed in your life all these years and everything. Like, see, teachers have such a great impact. Okay,
she
Nick.
She became a Bama fan, believe it or not.
She became a.
She has
all right.
lots of Bama paraphernalia in her house that we just made sure that we had to get to her. For
Is
sure.
that because of you or because?
Some purchased, but some also donated. Yes, from the cost. Yes.
Okay, he's not biased or anything this weekend. Nick, for you, same question. Who's a teacher that had the biggest impact?
I'm going to break your rule a little bit. I'm going to mention more than one.
Okay.
My parents were my favorite teachers, and not just because all parents are also teachers, because they actually were teachers. I grew up in a household full of teachers. My mom was an art teacher, a creative writing teacher. My dad was a phys ed teacher, and my high school basketball coach. They both got divorced when I was in high school and remarried teachers. My dad remarried a second grade teacher. My mom married a university professor. So I couldn't avoid teachers if I wanted to. And so every day was an education in my household.
That's beautiful. No, that's a good, like, you can, my mom's a teacher too. I get it.
I can't mention one parent,
She's not my favorite though. Shout out to my mom who's probably watching. Okay, Chris, same question for you.
Well, mine a little different as well. It wasn't a teacher, it was an advisor.
Okay.
At East Carolina. So when I first got there as a freshman, she took kind of like that whole freshman class together and was like, I'm gonna make sure everybody get their degree or whatever. But you know, in our mind, we like, that's cool, but we trying to make it to the NFL or whatever like that. But she stayed on us, and she especially stayed on me all the way through my years in college. So I ended up going through school. My last year, ended up leaving early. Well, I didn't leave my junior year, but my senior year, I still had one semester left. And I stopped and started training for the draft and got drafted and stuff. Went through my whole career, 10-year career. And all throughout my NFL career, she used to call me every year like, we're gonna make sure you graduate. We're gonna make sure you come back and get your degree. Like, she used to call me every single year. And then when I retired, she called me again. She was like, the time is now to come back to school and get your degree. And I went back to school, finished my semester up, and I ended up getting my degree.
Such a beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Such a beautiful story. Now, when you said that she called you up, I thought you were going to say she called and was like, where are my tickets?
Nah, she never asked for tickets, no nothing. She just, and her name is Margaret Clayton. And the crazy thing about it, about the time I finished school, she wasn't even at East Carolina no more. So when it was time for me to get back in school, she made the calls for me, got me back in school, did all those type of things, and I ended up finishing.
I'm loving all these stories because it shows that it doesn't just stop in the classroom, that teachers have such an impact on your lives as you go through. And I love that you highlighted the fact that she's an advisor, because it's not, I keep saying teachers, but it's really about educators. It's about teachers, it's about principals, it's about counselors and advisors as well. So thank you for those stories. And Nick, last but not least, same question.
My story is very similar to Greg's. My kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Martino, next to my mom, is the most influential woman I ever had. Every student who walked in her classroom felt loved, felt nurtured, felt empowered. I still kept in touch with her on Facebook, so whenever I did any press, I would always talk about my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Martino. I'd always tell a story on how one of my toughest days, being Italian, being left-handed, my grandmother wasn't very kind to that, so she kept trying to make me write right-handed. I'd go to kindergarten class, I'd be upset about it. She would always sit down, talk to me, read me a book about all the amazing left-handed people. So I would always tell that story on the news, and then she let me keep my favorite toy one day, a He-Man action figure. So I would always tell that to her. I finally emailed her about it and sent her a link to one of the news stories. She said, I have to talk to you. So I gave her my number. She called me after 30 years, and she said, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. But I wasn't your kindergarten teacher. I was your preschool teacher. And it wasn't a He-Man action figure. It was a Fonzie doll.
No.
So after 30 years, I finally went to go see her. She opened the door. She started crying. I started crying, which is not my biggest message. It is never too early to thank a former teacher in your life, but it can be too late. So always, always reach out. It means so much to us as educators.
Beautiful, beautiful story. I don't know how you confused the Fonzie and the
I
He-Man.
suppressed that because obviously He-Man, yeah, and there is a Fonzie action figure. And my mom clarified it was Fonzie.
I hope in hearing these stories you realize how impactful educators are, and maybe you're thinking of the educator in your life that made a difference. And maybe, like Nick, you want to call out that person and tell them the impact that they made and are continuing to make in your life. Okay, we're going to continue this conversation about talking about education and student athletes. Nick, I'm going to follow up with you. Now, you played football at Rutgers, but you are now a current teacher. So when you were playing football at Rutgers, was school always as important to you as you hope it is for the kids that you currently teach?
I wish I could say yes, but athletics in itself is a very interesting thing because it's such a commitment. I will say this, being a student athlete prepared me more for a teacher than I would have ever imagined outside of that. And the one thing, obviously the hard work, the resilience, the fighting through injuries, overcoming failure, but the interaction of teammates. I really think about how many cultures, ethnicities, races, creeds, and backgrounds you work with, you fight with. And as an educator who teaches diverse students, it prepared me so much for different cultures and empathizing with students from different backgrounds and understanding. So I would say being a student athlete prepared me more because of my teammates and that interactions. Because again, a lot of times when you live in a certain place, you're not exposed to everybody. But it made me a better teacher, and those are one of the most powerful lessons I could take is I think it's such a great microcosm of the world. And I feel like being a student athlete, it makes you a better person, it makes you more empathetic.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think I want to dive into the term student athlete because it's not athlete student, it's student athlete. Emphasis on the student. Chris, can you talk to us about your days as a student athlete and tell us about your experience, but then also the importance of the term student athlete?
Yeah, it's definitely important, and I figured that out like on the back end. Like even going through high school, my mindset was always, I wanted to go to the NFL. I wanted to play college football. I want to do this. And then when it gets to the point when it's time to go to college, it's like, no, you got to hold on. You got to see what's up with these grades. And that was one of the things that I had to go through is because my grades weren't the best. So I had to, my whole 12th grade year, I had to go to nights. I had to go to school, go to practice, then right after practice, go to night school, like the whole entire year just to get my grades up for me to go to school. And I wish I would have looked at it different because if I would have took more energy into school and get my grades right, I wouldn't have had to do all that, but it taught me hard work or whatever. And then like going to college, you can't play if your grades not right. In high school you can't play, in college you can't play if your grades not right. And it just teach you like the meaning of hard work. It's not, you just can't put everything into like football. You gotta, because at the end of the day, football, the life span on football is 2-3 years. I was lucky enough to play 10 years, but I retired at 32? And you know, normal people don't retire at the age of 32, so I still got my whole life ahead of me. So that's why you have to be in the books, and it's very important because once football is over, you got to get into something else. You can't live off that money for the rest of your life.
It's so true. It was hard enough for me to just be a student in college. I cannot imagine being a student athlete. Greg, so I'll ask you this question. You were a college student athlete as well. You were at the top of your game on and off the field. How did you balance the two?
You know,
Or did you? Is that a myth?
Yeah, did the best I could. You know, for me, my parents did a really good job. My teachers, really early on, like, all right, football did not come natural to me. Like, I was a baseball player, but school always did. You know, school to me was somewhat natural. So I always felt like I had to work extremely hard in football and I didn't work as hard in school. Well, as school got more difficult, I had to realize, man, I got to start paying attention here, which took away maybe a little bit from the focus I was putting on the football field. But I always tried to live by one thing: do the best you can in whatever it is you're trying to pursue. If I'm trying to pursue success on the field, I was going to do whatever I could possibly do to try to achieve that. Same goes for the classroom. To me, I was capable of getting A's. I wanted to get A's. No A's, no plays, is what my parents always said. Like, so I wouldn't play if I didn't get A's. It was as simple as that. They weren't necessarily as hard on me as I was on myself, but I always felt with me being able to try to balance the two was I needed that harmony in my life. And football provided an outlet, but school also provided an outlet, because football, for me, I wasn't as good as Chris. Like, I wasn't. There were days in which football made me miserable. There were a lot. And school actually made me feel better. And there were days that school made me feel miserable and football made me feel better. So the fact that they could kind of counteract each other, and that a good day in the classroom might be able to overcompensate for a bad day on the field and vice versa, that allowed me to feel balanced in kind of my process and my going through both high school and college. So I always really valued the academic experience, and knew that I wasn't going to be able to play forever, and knew that it was highly unlikely that my career was going to be able to allow me to play to the point in which I don't have to work anymore. So very, very grateful to the seeds that were planted in me early, and being able to value both and really treat both and the successes in both with the same level of appreciation.
I really appreciate the honesty on this panel, because a lot of times you see you on the football field, you see you perform, and you think that things just come to you naturally, whether it be football, whether it be in the classroom, and you think, oh, that's easy, you know, like they're making it seem like it's easy, but you don't see the hard work that goes into what you do on and off the field. So I'm loving this conversation. Nick, there's two Nicks. Nick, I'm gonna ask you this question now. You played hoops in college, right? All right, so we're changing sports a bit, but you were also an engineering major at a Polytech Institute, which I know was not easy. I can't even wrap my mind around engineering.
Yeah, I can't at this point either. I don't know how I did it, to be honest with you.
But you did. Can you talk about what that experience was like?
Well, that's a good question, because I'm a little different than these three guys. I wasn't a Division I athlete. I had no delusions of grandeur in college. I knew I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. There was no glitz. There weren't a lot of people watching my games. I just loved to play, and I think back on it, you know, being an engineering major was pretty rigorous. Like, I had to work hard at that. I consider myself a pretty smart guy, but that was hard. But at the same time, even though I was a Division III athlete, I still wanted to be the best basketball player I could. I'm very competitive, so I worked very hard at that. And looking back on it, I clearly did it just because I loved it. I think it complemented the educational process for me. I can't imagine just going to school and not being a student athlete.
Yeah.
It could be something else, it could be some other interest you have, but I think you need a diversion, a purpose, a passion that kind of gives you a reason to keep going on the academic side, because there's days where it's hard. You don't want to study.
Yeah.
You know, unless you're one of those people that have this insatiable love of learning, when I don't know too many of those people, you know, it's a chore. You know, it's a job. You know, in fact, my oldest son is a freshman baseball player at Manhattan College. Just finished his first semester, and they had a fall practice, you know, every day, lifting, classes in the morning. I mean, he's a Division I athlete, and he had that kind of schedule. So I was concerned. I said, you know, how are you doing? Are you managing your time okay? He says, Dad, I got so much time. He says, I don't know how my friends at school who don't play sports, I don't know what they do with their time. So it can be done. You know, I think it teaches you time management. It teaches you, look, when you graduate college and you have a job, you don't just go to work and go home and do nothing, right? You have some fun, right? So it's okay to do things that you're passionate about and work hard at your profession at the same time.
Absolutely. And while we're going down memory lane, I would imagine that maybe you're thinking this too, is what would I have told myself when I was a student athlete that I wish, you know, I would have known back then, or maybe what's some advice that you give? Because I imagine that student athletes talk to you guys all the time, and they're always coming to you for advice. And there might be a future student athlete out here in the crowd, or this is streaming digitally, someone may be watching. What would you say to them that you wish you would have known back then, or maybe just some advice? Yes, Greg.
You know, for me, the biggest thing that I try to tell guys now is you never know when somebody's watching, both for the better and for the worse. I talk to guys all the time, and I work for ESPN now, and have been very lucky to kind of fall into this. I didn't study journalism. I didn't do broadcast classes. I didn't do broadcast boot camp in the league. Like, I didn't do any of that. But when I was talking with local media members, someone at ESPN at the time said, hey, I think he'd be good on the air. Unknowingly to me, they kind of circled me when I was in school saying, okay, that might be someone that we would like to potentially have on our network someday. I had no idea. I had never prepared to do a broadcast. All I wanted to do was just try to help the local media members out by giving them quality tidbits about our process and pursuit of perfection that year and whatnot. So I think that's one thing, is that there are talent scouts and evaluators and people that could, and doors that could open when you have no idea they could be right there, right in front of you. So just treat people with amazing respect, do the best way you possibly can do in a world in which everything's broadcast. Do everything that you can possibly do to shine a positive light on who you are and what you're trying to do in the world. So you just never know what door could open as a result of it. So that's the advice I always give to young guys now.
That's amazing. Nick, your turn.
I would say to, enjoy the moments. You think about it when you look back at the things you've done in your life, especially being an athlete in college. You remember moments. It may be a moment in a game, but it may be the bus ride, with your teammates. It may be some off-season, competition you have after strength and conditioning. It could be anything, but just remember those moments, because it goes by so fast. And I try to tell my two sons that, think about what you're doing, think about how special it is, and think about the games. Do not take one game for granted. We're in the era of opt-outs, and I don't want to go down that path. In this conversation, people are free to do what they want, but I feel bad for some of those guys who opt out, because I'm pretty sure that 20 years from now they'll look back and go, you know what, I would kill to play one more college game with my teammates, and they're passing up that opportunity.
Interesting. Chris?
I would say, don't be afraid to ask for help. I feel like, everybody, when they want to go to college and play sports, they want to go to the big schools, they want to go to the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Miamis, the Florida States, and that's what I wanted to do. I ended up going to East Carolina, and I think a big part of that was because of my grades. And I just feel like if I can go back and do something again, I would have went and talked to my teachers more. I would have went and told them I need help, or go and ask for help, and that way my grades wouldn't have dropped as far as they dropped, and I wouldn't have had to scramble at the end to pull my grades up just to try to make it to school, because schools look at that. They look at if your grades not up to par where they need to be, they don't want to take a chance on you, because they don't want to give you a scholarship and you come to school and you fail out of school. So I just say, don't be afraid to ask for help, and go to your teachers when class is over, the bell ring. Go to your teacher, tell you need a little more help or whatever. That's what I would say.
That's great. Nick?
See, I look at it from a high school teacher who now has high school students who are playing. And to elaborate what Nick said, enjoy the moment, because it goes by so fast, so quick. But at the same time, I stress to them that life is not an individual sport. All about team, that everyone is here, or everyone succeeds, everyone does what they do because someone either supported them, believed in them, or pushed them. And as teammates, to me, it's like having that community where you could compete against each other, at the same time lift each other up and support each other, I think is so essential, because it's such a great preparation for life. It's just to be a champion for everyone, including yourself.
Absolutely. Before I ask more questions of the panel, I just want to see are there any audience questions? All right, come on up here, front center. Oh, she's got a microphone for you, so everyone can hear your question.
I have two questions for Chris Johnson. First one is, did you ever have a favorite teacher that maybe inspired you to do your best on the field?
I would say that same advisor that I had, because even though she was tough on me with my grades, she's a season ticket holder for the Pirates and stuff like that, and she loved the game. And the crazy thing about it, after every game, she used to meet me after every game, and she used to ask me about my grades or whatever. I'm like, I just ran for 300 yards. You talking about grades or whatever? But yeah, Miss Margaret Clayton, that's my favorite teacher in the world.
And then my other question is, who is your favorite opponent in the NFL?
My favorite opponent, I would have to say Troy Polamalu.
Oh, go. Do you think the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl? You're supposed to say yes. That's your team. You're wearing the jersey. Look at this guy. This guy's going to be a GM.
Tennessee.
Thank you so much. See, if you had asked me, I would say the Cowboys are definitely making it from Dallas, Texas. Any more questions? Any more questions before we keep going? Okay. Back on education as student athletes. Nick, you're our resident teacher on the panel. What inspired you to go into education?
Well, I teach history, so Indiana Jones definitely was a big part of that.
Oh, wow.
But, well, it's funny, because as athletes, you always think that coaches play such an essential role, and they do. But I have yet to meet an athlete who can't thank a teacher who kind of pushed them or an advisor. And I was so fortunate and so blessed to have, and again, most in high school, your social studies teacher is your coach. So I went from having my social studies teacher in my classroom who inspired me to become a teacher, and then on the football field, he yelled horrible things at me to push me to get that extra level. But I had amazing history teachers who made me love history and made me love just the idea of competition and that work ethic. So I would say teach my elementary school teachers and my social studies teachers, which is why I teach history now.
Absolutely. Other Nick on the panel, it's your job as the executive director of bowl season to oversee all of those events, but it's the community aspect of the bowls that's really important to you. Now, to bring this back, if you were here from the beginning, I'm an ambassador for College Football Playoff Foundation, and we have the Extra Yard for Teachers initiative. Where has the Extra Yard come into play on that front?
Yeah, thank you for asking me that. So when we formed bowl season 2 years ago to pull together all 44 bowl games, we had a lot of ideas in mind on how we can use that new organization. It was going to be used to promote all the individual bowl games and all the great experiences that people have who participate in them, the host communities, but really to assist each of the bowl games with their community engagement and all the great work they do. At their foundation, every bowl game is a community-based event that supports, those communities are so proud to host those games, and in turn, those games do a lot to support those communities. We were trying to find one cause that could unite all 44 bowl games. I began conversations with Britton Banowski, who heads up the College Football Playoff Foundation and the Extra Yard for Teachers. I had always thought it was exclusive to the playoff bowl games in the championship structure. But there were a couple other bowl games that were involved and that they supported. So the conversation evolved to where in early September on the Extra Yard for Teachers big day, all 44 bowl games were involved, and we're able to give grants to a teacher or teachers in their community. So it's really a bowl season, bowl system-wide initiative now, and that's something we're really, really proud of.
Absolutely. I'm proud to be involved with it as well. Last question, and then we'll open it again up to if anyone wants to ask another question of the panel while we have them on stage, or if there's someone coming in digitally or watching this from streaming that has a question. Just to bring this back full circle, how does being a student athlete prepare you for career and life after school? And you've kind of touched on it a little bit in the sense that there's more to life than just the sports that you play in college, but I think being a part of a team, there's just so much that you can learn from that. So if you can just touch a little bit about the importance of being a student athlete and just how that has prepared you for the future, for your life and career. Whoever wants to take it.
Okay, I can say me because like now I have kids. So me going through it and being a student athlete and just knowing what it takes, I know how to prepare them or whatever. So like, I let them, when they get out of school, I make sure they have a tutor so they're on top of their grades. And then after that, they go to training or practice or whatever they got to do. But it just shows you that, like, even though you got a job, when you get home, you can't just get home and just do whatever you got to do, whatever. You got kids to tend to. Yeah. So you got to see what their problems is. You might have to help them with their homework, or you got to feed them, or just they're your second job, basically. So it's like your work is your work. So like when I was in the NFL, that's my work, and then when I get home, the kids is the school. You know what I'm saying? The kids are the school. So just juggling two things in life, it just helps a lot being a student athlete, like in the real world.
Absolutely.
I think what Chris said is absolutely right. I think, you know, it seems as if nowadays people are getting more selfish in this world. I don't know, that's just my perspective. And when you're a part of a team, there's no room for selfishness. I mean, it just can't exist. Number one, your teammates are going to be up your butt about it. Number two, you're probably not going to be a very good team. You're not going to win a lot of games. So it teaches you it's not just about you, right? It doesn't matter, all the time what you want. It's what's best for the team. And when you think about it, you go through life, you're on a lot of teams, right? When you're a kid, your family's your team, your parents, your brothers and sisters. You get married, I have another team, another family team, right? Your work is your team, your friends your team, your community, right? If you're involved in youth sports in your community, and whenever you're with a group of people, if that group of people is going to be successful at whatever they're trying to do, there's no room for selfishness, and being on a team teaches you that.
Well, I never thought of it that way. You're right. Everything we do is teamwork. Any other questions from the audience? All right, here we go. Oh, we got a microphone. We'll come to you.
This is for Greg. What's your most memorable game at Alabama, and do you ever get to speak to Nick Saban, or how often does that happen?
A lot more often now, in like a more personal setting. I think in my 4 years in Tuscaloosa, the conversations we had that didn't center around football might have been counted on one hand. So it's always nice to pick his brain. We talk a lot. So appreciate him. I wouldn't be where I'm at without him. I mean, it's the truth. The things you learn in his program. Another educator. I mean, coaches are teachers in a lot of ways, and he is. If it's not for Joanne Rye, there's no one that's had a more profound impact on my life outside of my parents than Nick Saban. So just the application of the things I learned in the program are invaluable. My favorite game would have had to have been the 2009 SEC Championship game against Florida. That was the beginning of the run. And people look to the game against Texas a few weeks later. Texas was not the Super Bowl. Like, it's as crazy as that may sound, that was not the game that we had circled for the year. Texas was the opponent, and it was the ultimate goal to, maybe win a national championship, but the goal was to become the best team in college football that year, and the team that we needed to topple to be able to become the best team was Florida. Florida at that point had won 2 out of 3 national championships, had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and a roster that was completely stacked. And a lot of people didn't give us a whole lot of, this might sound a little familiar, a lot of people didn't give us a lot of opportunities in that game. We were the underdog. And being able to rally the troops that night was pretty rewarding. And to beat them, not just win the game, but beat them as convincingly as we did, was increasingly rewarding. And then to see now what's come of it is the most satisfying thing of it all. So winning the national championship was great, but that was the start of what now has become probably the greatest run in the history of college sports.
Now I would like to say something. In my introduction, I forgot to say that I went to the University of Texas at Austin. So everything you just said just hurt. So we didn't have them circled on our calendar. People, this and this and this about the team. I'm just sitting here like, we were devastated.
But you could say if Cole didn't get hurt. Like, you could
Cole
say
got
that.
hurt, first play of the game.
So basically y'all won. If Cole didn't get hurt, you would have won, right?
I was like, wow, we didn't talk about this backstage, but my goodness.
I'm from Dallas, so like I get it. Like I've heard it, and I go home now, and that's all I hear about. So it's now, I feel like the statute of limitations for Texas disappointment has run out. I no longer feel sorry for what happened that night.
And you should. And you should. But thank you for asking that question so I could really see who Greg is. I appreciate that. Any more questions from the audience? Oh, come on up.
All right. I have another question for Chris Johnson. When you were playing what you thought was your worst game ever, mentally, how did you come back from that to go play normally as good as you were?
I think my worst game was I had like 2 fumbles one game. And honestly, I can't say it was myself, I can say it was my teammates, the people around me, my coaches just telling me to keep my head up, it's gonna be all right. Other running backs that's in the room with me, just keeping my spirit up and just letting me know how good of a player I am. Don't worry about that, forget about it, because when you play in this game, in pretty much any sports, you gotta have a mind where you can just wipe it out your mind. Like whatever happened, just forget about it. Don't worry about it and move on to the next play. So I would say it was my teammates and my coaches.
Any more questions? Well, I have a question. I'll ask each of you who's going to win on Monday. Who do you think?
Who do I think?
Don't look at Greg.
Okay.
I'm not insulted, I promise. I'm not.
I mean,
I'm used to this. With guys making crazy picks. If you pick Georgia,
I don't want
we know
Georgia
where we're
fans to hate me, but I do think Alabama's an amazing team. And I do think culture is something that's so powerful.
I think Georgia. and probably because you know Alabama done won so much and they always there. We want to see somebody new win.
Now, the only reason I would say Georgia is it's really hard. When you have two really, really good teams, it's hard to beat a team twice. It really is. You learn so much from that first time. Georgia's going to come out a totally different team than they did in the SEC championship game. So if I had to pick one, it'd be Georgia.
I think it's gonna be a heck of a game. Like anyone that thinks it's gonna be as one-sided as it was last time, I don't see it that way. I mean, this Georgia team is special, man, and they had a tough day. And hey, great teams beat other great teams when one team plays great and the other team plays poorly. So I like Bama slightly, but I think it's gonna be a whole heck of a lot more competitive than the last time around.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping it's a fantastic game. We're all excited to be here, and I know we all want to see that. And I'm going to look Greg right in the eye when I say Georgia.
I would go horns down, but that's a 15-yard penalty now. You can't do that, so I'm not allowed to do that anymore.
You guys, thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope you enjoyed the panel, for those who are streaming this, for those who are attending, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the festivities this weekend. There are going to be some great panels here on this stage, and there's some great events throughout. So enjoy yourselves. Take care.